Yep. Yep.
I'll answer.
Yeah.
I'll answer mine. And then I can answer her.
That's cute. I like that.
Is this count?
You guys ready?
This was the question. And year. I said this guy.
Oh, I saw this.
2020.
Right. Right.
The caucus meeting of September 6, 2022 will now come to order at 7:47 p.m. Present are Council President Broussard, Council Members Gilchrist, Glassburn, Heeman, Kelly, Limpert, and Scarl, the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Economic Director, Safety Director, Service Director, Recreation Director, and guests. If there are no additions or corrections, the caucus meeting minutes of February 15th, March 1st, March 15th, and August 16th, 2022 are approved as written. There are no items being recommended for suspension this evening. As far as assigning legislation, ordinances 2022-77 and 78, as well as resolutions 2022-80 and 81 will all be assigned to finance. And ordinance 2022-79 will be assigned to environmental control. So scheduling committee meetings for Tuesday, September 13th, 2022, being mindful after the public hearing for ordinance 2022-71, which is scheduled for 7 p.m. Councilman Limper, would you like to schedule a building and zoning and development committee meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple notes, though. I'm going to request, on behalf of the administration, had asked us to remove 2022-68 from the agenda tonight, and so that will be going into committee as well if that passes, to remove from the agenda. And I would schedule, I assume, the public hearing. We'll start at 7:05, but really it'll be whenever that completes. And so it will be 68, 71, and then I'd like to bring back up 72 and 73 that were held in committee last time.
Okay, sounds good. Councilman Glassburn, would you like to schedule a finance committee meeting?
Yes. Mr. Walker, did you decide on how much time? I'm sorry. Did I
Oh,
miss that?
sorry. Yeah, this let's go till 7:30.
Okay. I'd like to schedule a meeting of the Finance Committee at 7:30 on September 13th to hear ordinances 80 and 81. I'd like to bring back Resolution 75 that was held in committee. And then,
For the ARPA?
yes.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, they're not ready to, with the AV information that you requested at the last ARPA meeting.
Okay, then, I guess
That's
we
why I didn't put it on.
won't discuss, I mean, does anyone on council wish to discuss the ARPA legislation at all?
Will we have answers about AV by next Tuesday?
No.
Okay. Excuse me, Mr. Council President, we would request that council still hold that ARPA in committee, as we don't know that we will have the full answers for you by next Tuesday. But we will let the Finance Committee Chairman know when we do.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, well, strike 75, and then Vice Chair Limpert, I believe, is looking to schedule 2 other ordinances for that committee.
Sure. On behalf of Finance, I'll schedule ordinance 2022-77 and 2022-78, which are school bonds, and I will schedule that to follow the completion of 2022-80 and 2022-81.
All right, thank you. Lastly, Councilman Scarl, would you like to schedule an environmental control meeting?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. President. Schedule environmental control meeting for ordinance 2022-79 I guess I don't really have a time since 80 and 81 is going to follow after 7:30, so.
Councilman Limper, do you have a best guesstimate on how long that'll?
Mr. Glassman, what time did you think you would be done?
I'm also okay if we want to allow environmental control to go at 7:30 and then we can pick up at, say, 7:40.
Yeah, I think I need 10 minutes, 15.
I think that would be
Sure,
advised.
yeah, let's flip-flop those then.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right, I'll be scheduling a special council meeting for Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 at 8 o'clock PM to consider legislation that will be on second and third reading. And lastly, there will be a special presentation of appreciation this evening for first responders saving the life of a patient in cardiac arrest earlier this year, as well as 2 commendations of valor for the officers involved in the Walmart attack. Does anyone on council have anything else they wish to bring up this evening? Anything from the administration?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor. Seeing nothing else, this caucus meeting of September 6, 2022 is adjourned at 7:53 PM. The council meeting of September 6, 2022 will now please come to order at 8:02 p.m. The audience is invited to join council in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Broussard,
Present.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Here.
Mr. Glassberg,
Here.
Ms. Heeman,
Here.
Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Mr. Limpert,
Present.
Mr. Scarl,
Present.
Ms. Williamson.
If there are no additions or corrections, the minutes of the special council meeting of January 25th, the council meetings of February 15th and March 1st, the special council meeting of March 8th, the council meeting of March 15th, the special council meetings of July 5th, July 7th, and July 11th, and the council meeting of August 16th, 2022 are approved as written. Moving into reports, Mayor Daley Jones, do you have a report this evening?
Yes, Mr. President. Good evening. I'm very pleased this evening to have a number of special guests with us for tonight's meeting, which will be a testament to the exceptional work being done on a daily basis by our fire and police departments. First, I want to introduce Fire Chief Shep, who will tell us about a very special reunion happening right here in the wake of a January 2nd, 2022 call for assistance.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, and I want to thank the administration for this time and this opportunity to share the story that you're going to hear about this evening. Back in January, Captain Schlapak, he's one of our command staff officers, came to me and said, we had an interesting night. We had a full arrest, and normally when I hear that, you take it with a grain of salt because these things don't often turn out well. Well, he said, well, this one worked out. We had a save, and the gentleman's in the hospital, and we're optimistic about his recovery. And I said, okay, keep me posted. Well, the reports started to come in later and later, and the improvement and everything. And it was very early on, we're seeing that this was a very viable save and a real attribute to all the first responders and all the people that help us do our work every day. Firefighting is a team sport, and EMS is part of firefighting. And we do a lot of training, we do a lot of research, a lot of work with our partners such as university hospitals. And I'll introduce Captain Schlapak here in a minute, and he'll introduce our working partners with university hospitals. But that's a team approach that the whole result of that was the save of the result of Mr. Nicias, and he's here tonight, and we're going to talk to him here in just a little bit. So without going into a lot of detail about the actual events and everything, I just want to say how proud I am of the members of the North Olmsted Fire Department. The police department did a great job, our dispatchers. Everybody did what they were supposed to do, and they did it with teamwork, they did it with compassion, and they did it with professionalism, and it's evident here tonight. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Captain Brian Schlapak. He's our EMS officer for the North Olmsted Fire Department.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Finance, Safety Director, Fire Chief, everybody. I want to start off by saying that tonight is truly about only two things, okay? It's about celebrating the life of a patient who's here tonight, and it's about recognizing the teamwork from the police and fire and the dispatchers who made that happen, all right? So what we're here to talk about tonight is that celebration of life and what a blessing it was. We go on a lot of calls with the fire department and the police department, and dispatchers get a lot of those calls, all of them, except for the ones that come off the emergency line. But it's a big deal when things work out really good. A lot of things have to come together. A lot of things that the general public probably doesn't see. A lot of things that sometimes can only happen with the support of the administrations and the council, because everything has a system, okay? And not just pre-hospital, but then we get to the hospital. We get our direction from university hospitals, more specifically St. John's Medical Center, and there's representatives here tonight from them. But what happened on this evening was we had a gentleman who had no heart rate anymore. He wasn't breathing on his own, and they called for help. okay? And what we do is we help. The dispatcher took the call, the police officers and fire responded, police officers were first on scene. They did some pretty amazing things right out the gate that made all the difference. And then the fire department came on, and they did more amazing things that made the difference. And then they took them to the hospital, and the hospital did things that we're blessed to be able to have this day and age. Because 100 years ago, they couldn't do some of the things they do today. It's amazing stuff. But the interoperability of the police, the dispatch, and the fire department working together with the authorities having our back, and the fire department and the hospital, everyone working together is what led to this moment. The CPR that was done, police officers using the AEDs, that training is so important. Because without that training, an emergency might come in and we might not know what to do. But everyone knew what to do. And most importantly, it led to Mr. Nishas being with us today. So what I would like to do is reunite Mr. Nishas with the people who actually made the difference, okay? So if you're okay with that, Mr. and Mrs. Nishas, if you wouldn't mind coming up here for a moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce them to the people who took care of them. And then I have a few more special dignitaries that are here. We have Jonathan Sanu, who's the Chief Officer of St. John's. We have Linda Owen, who's the head of their cardiovascular department. And we have Dr. Spanner, who's the Chief EMS Coordinator of all of UNT. So we have some pretty important people here tonight. Even though they would probably downplay and tell you they're not, they are. They have our backs and lets us do what we do. So we appreciate their support. So this is Mr. Nishas, this is his wife, Mrs. Nishas, and without... Well, the people that are here, I'm going to call them up one at a time, okay? We're going to start off with the dispatcher, Cassidy. If she could please come up. This is one of the people that you maybe don't see their faces, but you hear them on the other end of the phone. This is kind of like the first line. So this is Cassidy. The police officers, Officer Walcott and Officer Wyatt. I couldn't find
I guess.
These gentlemen actually performed CER and put AEDs on the patients. Now the fire department that was there that night, I'll call all up together. We have Captain Matt Peters, Lieutenant Adam Budak, Firefighter Keith Rush, and Firefighter Timothy Fleshman. If you can please come up.
Thank you very much. You guys came up one time, huh?
So like I mentioned, there are some other people here I'm going to turn this over to. And I didn't write this down, but I do have to say that life is really short. So when we get these kind of opportunities, we got to take it. This is, you know, it comes and goes this fast. And this was the time that it was meant to be because the right people were there and a higher power was looking out and everything came together in a really blessed, beautiful way. But without any further ado, we have we have Linda Owen, Dr. Spanner, and Jonathan Sadu here, who I'm going to turn it over to. And they have a few words they're going to say too, okay? All right.
I would like to say a few words because you don't get to see this very often. And this is the kind of stuff we celebrate in any institution. This is somebody who survived basically a near-death experience. And that happens because of what we refer to as a chain of survival. And it actually started with his wife, who recognized it immediately and called 911. And then these police officers, my goodness, They put the AEDs on. You know how many police officers are ready to do that? It's a rare breed. So they started CPR. They kept that chain, that link of survival, strong. They did the CPR. They put the AED on. The dispatcher gets the right people to the right place at the right time so they can give him the care that he needs. And they continued that chain with the firefighter paramedics who are well-trained, managed his airway, managed his medication. When his heart stopped again, en route to the hospital, they put the Lucas automated compressor on him and kept his heart moving so that he can perfuse his brain so he could stand here and speak to everybody. They never stopped making sure that his brain got good perfusion of blood and oxygen. And then in the emergency room, that link's important. They continued pressor agents to keep his blood pressure up. They managed to keep his vital signs stable. He gets to the intensive care unit where they cooled him. And the end result is a gentleman who was on life support in the intensive care unit coming off life support because every link in that chain of survival was there. So congratulations to all of you. Very proud.
And good evening, my name is Jonathan Sedillo. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of St. John Medical Center. Really my privilege to be here tonight. Just want to echo all the things that have been said. I'm also a first responder. That's what I do on my weekend job because I love it. And I know what it's like to be in your shoes and taking care of patients like this. It's really, really a special thing. Proud of Linda Owen and her team, the cath lab team through our Harrington Heart and Vascular Institute. Fantastic work by everybody. We're blessed to be a partner in your community. So Chief Shep, I would like to present to you this plaque, recognizing the patient's positive outcome, exceptional team members working together to really impact lives and families. Thank you. Jonathan, if you could you take, I want to bring the police chief up too. Absolutely, please. This is, you met Chief Shep, we also have Police Chief Wagner here. It's an honor to have you here. Everything else this is all for you. But I wanted to introduce the police chief as well, and remind everybody that after this is all done, we have a giant cake, because there's no better way to celebrate a heart problem than to go eat cake, okay? You're all invited to come back to Fire Station 1 to have as much cake as you want, okay? And we really want to share some fellowship and some nice conversation with you, okay? But again, this is the small police chief. Nice to meet you, Chief. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We have the plaque here tonight. This will go with the dispatch crew. And then we have a second plaque coming that'll go in the firehouse and a third plaque that'll go in the police station. Thank you all. Give us a moment to be excused.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Nish, if you want to say something, you can, but there's no pressure, okay?
Well, I just want to thank everybody that saved my life. I don't remember anything because I was unconscious. And if it wasn't for all these people and their training, I wouldn't be here today. So I support them 100%. And I hope whatever they ask for, whatever they need on their job, I hope that they get it. They deserve it. They saved my life. And I'm sure they saved other people's lives besides me. And even if they haven't saved other people's lives, I'm sure they have devoted their life to try to save people. So I want to thank them. They deserve all the credit because I don't remember anything. Let's give them a big hand.
Thank you very much for having us.
Bye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We'll get out of here.
one is the one down by.
And Mr. President and council members, I now have the pleasure of introducing our Police Chief Wagner, who will share some information about the presentation of two very special Medal of Valor awards for two of our police officers, Officer Butcher and Officer Scullin.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, directors. I don't think in my 5+ years as chief that I've ever had the honor to give a Medal of Valor award. We go out there and do our jobs every day, the men and women of the police department. We save lives, as you saw here tonight. I'm very thankful to be standing here tonight to present this award to Officer Scullin and Officer Butcher for somebody that was, back on January 11th, they responded to a shoplifter at Walmart. We respond to shoplifters every single day. There's probably not a day that goes by that we don't respond to a shoplifter. I want to say a routine, and I use that in quotations because no call is routine, and the female suspect there that day was hell-bent on disarming Patrolman Scullin. He fought her, and Officer Butcher came to his aid, and we're happy here tonight that both officers were unharmed, and I can present a Medal of Valor for their actions that day with that suspect. I'm going to read to you briefly what Valor is defined of and then why we present a Medal of Valor. So Valor is defined as personal bravery, strength of mind or spirit that enables a person to encounter danger with firmness. The Medal of Valor is issued to officers who show outstanding bravery above and beyond that expected in the line of duty where risk of life has existed. Again, this female was trying very, very hard to disarm one of our officers, and we can only sit here and imagine what would have happened if she would have succeeded. You know, Officer Scullin is, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, #1 in seniority for our department?
Correct, yes.
So, unfortunately, he's going to be retiring here towards, right after the first of the year. It's going to be a big loss to the city. Pat's probably one of our most decorated officers in the history of the department. You are a Medal of Valor recipient already?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, this will be the first one. So I think the only award that he hasn't gotten would be the Master Report Writing Award.
Yes.
So I think that's the only one. So we're going to be very sad to see him retire, although he's expressed a little interest in being a next school resource officer for the city, so maybe we can come to terms on that. Officer Butcher, one of the most active officers we've ever had. Him and I got hired the same day. We've been friends for 25 years. He stops at nothing to hunt down a criminal, come to the aid of his officers. So I'm extremely happy to present this Medal of Valor for these two officers. Come on up, guys. I'm going to read you what it says actually on their certificate. So they get certificates as well as a pin that goes on their Class A uniforms. So for actions taken on January 11th when he was faced with a life-threatening situation with a female determined to disarm him, Officer Scullin exhibited exceptional courage, extraordinary decisiveness, and presence of mind to go along with unusual swiftness of action regardless of his personal safety to protect human life until fellow officers arrived to assist. For Patrolman Butcher, for actions taken on January 11th, 2022, when Officer Butcher was called upon to back up a fellow officer in a life-threatening situation with a female trying to disarm the officer. Officer Butcher displayed courage, professional and selflessness in his response to an officer in need. So, congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you for your dedication and duty and for your efforts to keep all of us and North Olmsted residents safe. On Sunday, September 11th, the North Olmsted Safety Forces will have a memorial service for the firefighters, police officers, and EMS personnel and citizens who died in the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. We will be honoring the memories of the soldiers who have died since. The memorial will be held at North Olmsted Fire Station Number 1 and is open to anyone who would like to attend. So council members, 9:30 on September 11th. Today was the first official day of school of the 2022-23 school year for the students here in North Olmsted. September 2022 is National Preparedness Month. Each September, National Preparedness Month is observed to raise awareness about the importance of being prepared for disasters. This year's theme is A Lasting Legacy. The life you've built is worth protecting. Prepare for disasters by creating a lasting legacy for your family. This is a reminder for both Ohioans and North Olmsted residents to prepare an emergency kit and do things like practicing evacuation routes from your home in the event of a disaster. Mark your calendars for Pumpkinville in the Valley to be held from 11 a.m. till 3:30 p.m. Sunday, September 25th at the Frostville Museum. The final West Side Flea of the season will be held from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. Saturday, September 17th at the North Olmsted Community Park. Over 100 vendors will be on hand. The North Olmsted Junior Women's Club will celebrate 80 years of service to our community next year in 2023. They will be hosting their annual open house at 7:30 p.m. Thursday, October 13th. And finally, the North Olmsted United Church of Christ will host their 100th anniversary celebration at the church on Sunday, October 16th. The church is the city's oldest house of worship. And that, Mr. President, concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Director of Law Garreau, do you have a report this evening?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a report this evening. And I believe that you had received, but certainly the administration received, I've received, and the billing department received a complaint last week regarding signs, temporary signs located on a residential property here in North Olmsted. That eventually was featured on a local news station regarding that sign that was placed in the front yard. And I wanted to, but I had received a letter, and we had, and I think you have as well. I don't know if you received the same letter or not. She said she would send it to you. And she asked several questions that I wanted to answer publicly so that we would have a better understanding about these types of situations as they come up and how we'll deal with them. So the letter itself dealt with a suggestion about a political sign located in the front yard of a residence, and another sign that had the letter F with an American flag, and then the K, and then Biden written after it. And she had expressed concern about the appropriateness of that, and what regulations does the city of North Olmsted have to deal with those types of communications and flags. And so first I want to answer the questions. But I want to at least tell you a little bit about what the regulations are so you understand. So this is not intended as a law class on First Amendment speech, but just to give you a little bit of an idea of what the city has to look at when we deal with these types of issues. So when you have an issue with a sign in a residential district, a removal order for a temporary sign with a non-commercial message like a political expression, that can be justified to remove it, but only if there's no content considerations given, and if that sign otherwise violates a content-neutral sign code regulations. Now, what does that mean? That could include a sign that's a prohibited size, or it's a prohibited height. Perhaps it's blocking traffic, among other things. And 1163.13 sets out a whole number of different content-neutral regulations that could justify a removal order, most of which will not apply to a garden variety political yard sign. They don't. So with a temporary sign with a non-commercial message in a residential district that does not otherwise violate our zoning code for size or setback or what have you, a removal order they generally they would be permitted if they're not otherwise in violation. There are some very limited exceptions that I'll get to in a minute, but a removal order based on content is not per se forbidden, but it's very, very, very high level of scrutiny that you're going to face. Some decisions, and I had the occasion to share this with with a member of council a couple years ago, but the Supreme Court of Ohio had mentioned this, and it didn't deal with signs, it just dealt with governments and free speech. As a general matter, the First Amendment means that government has no power to restrict expression because of its message, its ideas, its subject matter, or its content. It further went on, the right to free speech secured by the First Amendment is not absolute, however, and the government may regulate it in a manner that is consistent with the Constitution. So what's consistent with the Constitution? Well, a regulation that is content-based is presumptively unconstitutional and is subject to strict scrutiny, which requires the least restrictive means to achieve a compelling state interest. So if you're going to speak specifically about the message of the sign, you're going to have a very, very high hurdle to do it. If it's about the size of the sign or where the sign is illuminated or where it's hanging, then that's a restriction that's more likely to find favor. Those are content-neutral regulations limiting time, place, and manner are constitutional as long as they promote an important governmental interest, unrelated to the suppression of free speech, and they do not substantially burden more speech than necessary, right? So the issue is the First Amendment the First Amendment does permit restrictions on content of speech in a few limited areas. So people are going to say, all right, these signs, they have profanity on them, they say something. What is the law with respect to what can be regulated? This is not intended to be a full black treatise on the law, but the Supreme Court has said the types of messages you can actually give consideration to regulating are the ones you could probably guess if you had enough time, right? If it's intended and likely to incite imminent lawless action, obscenity, defamation, speech related to or integral to criminal conduct, fighting words, child pornography, fraud, truth threats, and speech presenting some grave and imminent threat the government has the power to prevent. You can kind of see when you start getting into the content of a sign, it's quite high. So the questions that were asked is, why is a flag promoting a presidential election flying more than 2 years before the election? Well, I don't know why it's flying 2 years before the election. I can say that that we do not have currently a regulation on flags. And the minute you try to determine what the message written on the flag is, you have created a content-based determination, and your content-based determination will probably find you to be in violation of the Constitution. I say probably, likely. Are there not rules about putting the limits on the time frame for display of these signs? We do not have that in our zoning code on purpose. Are there any limits on the kind of language that is allowed to be displayed in the public eye? I just gave them to you. Those are generally speaking the ones that would be limitations on speech with otherwise valid, lawful signs on the ground. Those types of regulations I just mentioned a minute ago about the content are about it. Are there any ordinances referring to this type of display? These were flags. The answer is no. If not, might they be brought to the attention of council and the law department for consideration? Yes. I think we need to define flags better so that we know you could probably deal with the number of flags. You could probably deal with the placement of flags, how you place them, the size of the flags. Those types of things could probably be given consideration in the zoning code, and we'll take a look at that to determine if it's council's desire or the administration's desire. We'll be happy to bring something forward to tighten that sign code up. She did say, how do we explain to our children the meaning behind the letters and the symbols? I can't answer that question. And unfortunately, I can't answer it. But I can tell you that there's a case almost directly on point. And again, nothing is it's never hard and set in stone, but these are the general guidelines we follow in municipal law when we look about how to regulate and what we can regulate. This has come up in 2020, 2021, and it's come up in 2022. It's the same question that comes up is, how do we deal with one particular word put on a sign in the front yard, and that word starts with the letter F, right? And some guidance comes from that. It's a difficult thing to regulate. Cohen versus California dealt with an individual who came to the courthouse and decided to wear a jacket during the Vietnam War that said, F the draft. Had the word spelled out, put it on his jacket. They charged him with disturbing the peace, found him guilty, and the United States Supreme Court said that could not happen, that there had to be something more than just the word. It had to be something else. So I think we're at a time when there's an expression, when people are inclined to express themselves in a way that we haven't traditionally seen in the past. And I suspect that those same expressions would be afforded the same level of protection as during the Vietnam War or at other times when words changed and words had meanings and words are put on signs. We didn't used to have people putting political yard signs out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days. We didn't have that. We do now. And it's protected. We have temporary sign code that's allowed. We have a code that looks like it needs a little bit of work that we'll go back and look at. I'm sorry that these questions are being posed the way they are, but we will, you know, as they come in, if you get a complaint about a yard sign, send it over to the building departments, and they will send it to the law department, and we'll talk about it and what to do about it. But as it stands now, the signs in question are back up. They are going to remain up for the time being, and we will take a closer look at the sign code to determine what, if any, amendments would be appropriate to bring to you folks. But, you know, I don't want to bore you with the law on that, but I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of what we have to go through to make a determination that governmental interest is present, but that free speech is also protected. Even if sometimes it's speech that we don't necessarily agree with, it still is speech that is protected by the Constitution. Mr. President, thank you. I just want to take a moment to bring that matter to your attention, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director. Director of Finance Coffer, do you have a report this evening?
I feel like I just sat through my constitutional law class again. Is there a quiz, Professor?
Yes.
The finance staff met with the mayor and her staff to collaboratively map out a timeline for the 2023 budget process. And I encourage council members to meet with the mayor and her administration so that you, who probably have high priority items that you believe are important, can work with her to get them in the first draft of the budget. The audit for the 2021 was released by the Auditor of State August 25th. Being that we are now audited by an independent public accountant that's contracted by the Auditor of State, a report is subject to a desk review by the Auditor of State, so it takes at least a month longer to get it released publicly. It is located on our website and also on the Auditor of State's website. The 2021 PAFR was submitted to the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, and was published on our website as well as other social media methods. There also was a text sent out last week on our text program regarding it. And I hope you notice this report has some different items reported in it than in the past, as well as reformatting some of the pages with a fresh look, and would love to hear from you if you have ideas and suggestions how to improve the report. And a big thank you goes to Keith Sperling, who made it all possible, and Rick Haas, who developed the mayor's pages and made them look fabulous. The May and June month-end summary and details reports were sent out this afternoon to the administration, council, and others, and I'm in process of doing the quarterly review, as I mentioned in the email, and we'll get it out to you shortly. But as always, please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions that you may have. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director. Moving into council committee reports, Councilman Kelly, Vice Chair of the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilman Limpert, Chairman of the Building, Zoning, and Development Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening, Mr. President, but I would like to make a motion to remove 2022-68 from the agenda, as I was approached by administration that they would like to propose an amendment based on feedback they've received from residents.
Is there a second?
And that's for a second.
Second.
Motion to remove 2022-68 from this evening's agenda, made by Councilman Lippert and seconded by Councilman Scarl. Roll call, please.
No.
Oh, it was Glass. I'm sorry.
No problem.
The second was made by Councilman Glassburn.
Mr. Limpert,
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn,
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist,
Yes.
Mr. Scarl,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Heeman,
Yes.
That motion is approved by a vote of 6-0.
Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Mr. President, my understanding is that matter was going to be reviewed in committee again, and Mr. Limpert, could you perhaps make a motion to refer that matter back to committee as well?
I would. Sorry, I thought that was implied. based on it, request them be amended, but I can do that. I'd like to make a motion to place this back into the Building Zone Development Committee, if that's my place to request. Ask for a second.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Motion to remove from the agenda and place back in committee made by Councilman Lippert, seconded by Councilman Glassburn. Roll call again, please.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. Glassberg?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is approved by a vote of 6-0. Councilwoman Heeman, Chairwoman of the Recreation, Public Parks and Buildings Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No, I do not. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilman Glassburn, Chairman of the Finance Committee, do you have a report this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. The Finance Committee met on August 23rd, 2022 at 7:33, ending at 7:50 with committee members Glassburn, Limpert, and Williamson, as well as council members Broussard, Gilchrist, Kelly, and Scarl, and the mayor and the directors of law, finance, economic development, safety service, recreation, and the special assistant to the mayor. On the agenda that evening was 2022-75 concerning ARPA funds, the second tranche to be appropriated by the city of North Olmsted. There was a general presentation. Council is awaiting further information on items regarding speed calming, as well as the line item concerning council chambers and the caucus room modernizations. The item was held in committee, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilman Kelly, Chairman of the Streets and Transportation Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report, but I'd like to say that West 231st has been completed. It's very smooth. They did a great job, and we're glad to see it done.
Thank you. Councilman Scarl, Chairman of the Environmental Control Committee, do you have a report this evening?
No report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gilchrist, Chairwoman of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, do you have a report this evening?
I do not. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Are there any letters or communications to come before council at this time?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. We will move into audience participation. Thank you for attending tonight's council meeting. Public comments offer the opportunity for members of the public to share information and bring issues and concerns to the attention of city council members. It is not a debate, and public comment speakers should not expect a back and forth exchange. Council members may ask clarifying questions of the speaker, city staff, or fellow council members. Those attending city council meetings should show the same respect to others that they wish to have shown to them. If there is anyone in the audience who would like to address council, please come to the podium, state and spell your name and address for the clerk. And if you live in a city other than North Olmsted, please state the name of that city and proceed with your comments. You will have up to 5 minutes.
Good evening, John Codafan, 25914 Tallwood Drive. I'm here on behalf of the Community Council, filling in for Jeff Peepers. Jeff could not make it this evening, but we wanted to just take a moment and appreciate the city, the mayor, the administration, council for we consider a successful homecoming. Great entertainment, food, fireworks. Nice to have our citizens out after a 2-year hiatus. Some specific folks we'd like to recognize. Chris Wetwar, the Assistant Commissioner of the Rec, and his maintenance staff who did a tremendous job keeping our parks clean. Tim Pinchek, Betsy from the Commission Parks Recreation Center. Tiffany Hunt from the Senior Center, the big help with our blood drive. Kevin Kearney, Dave Demeline, and their teams. Sean from the sign shop for helping get all of our signs printed. Safety Director Schofield, special shout out to Christine Jones from the the Administrative Secretary First year doing homecoming, did an outstanding job. Chief Wagner and his auxiliary being able to keep the peace. I think we had very little issues this year. Our building department, Katie Seeley, building coordinator, John Rutherford, the electrician, for helping keep everybody safe. The forestry foreman, Mike Bosu, his team, the park looked fantastic. And last but certainly not least, fleet manager Tony, getting the dare cart ready. I think it died on the last stretch of the park, but getting that all taken care of and representing, showing off the new trucks and equipment in the parade. But we appreciate the partnership from the city. It's a lot of work that goes into it. I joke that I'm Jeff's apprentice. It was very overwhelming to see the amount of work that goes into it. That it was fantastic, and we appreciate all the help and support from the city.
Seeing no other comments from the audience, we will now move into legislation.
Legislation on third reading, ordinance 2022-64, an ordinance introduced by Mayor Jones authorizing the Director of Human Resources to solicit proposals for excess insurance coverage for the city health care and hospitalization plans for 2023, and further authorizing the mayor, subject to approval by the Board of Control, to enter into a contract for said insurance coverage.
Mr. President, I would move to adopt 2022-64 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2022-64 made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-64 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Resolution 2022-65, a resolution introduced by Mayor Jones authorizing the Director of Public Safety to solicit statements of qualification, parens SOQ, and parens from qualified individuals to provide building official and master plans examiner services to the city, and further authorizing the mayor, following approval of the Board of Control, to enter into a contract with the individual or firm selected in the SOQ process and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I would move to adopt 2022-65 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-65 made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes. Yes.
Resolution 2022-65 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Resolution 2022-66, a resolution introduced by Mayor Jones authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to solicit statements of qualifications, parens SOQ, and parens from qualified firms to serve as the city's Division of Engineering, and further authorizing the mayor, following approval from the Board of Control, to enter into a contract with the firm selected in the SOQ process and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd move to adopt 2022-66 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-66 made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-66 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Resolution 2022-67, a resolution introduced by Mayor Jones authorizing the Director of Economic and Community Development to solicit statements of qualification, parens SOQ, from qualified individuals to serve as the city's grant writer, and further authorizing the mayor, following approval of the Board of Control, to enter into a contract with the individuals selected in the SOQ process and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I would move to adopt 2022-69 and ask for a second.
7.
I'm sorry, 67. Got ahead of myself.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-67 made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilman Limpert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-67 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Ordinance 2022-69, an ordinance introduced by Mayor Jones authorizing the mayor on behalf of the city of North Olmsted to enter into an agreement with the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission to provide professional services associated with creating a geographic information system, Friends GIS-based zoning map, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-69. Ask for a second.
Second.
A motion to adopt ordinance 2022-69 made by Councilman Limpert, seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Glassberg?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-69 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
Legislation on first reading. Ordinance 2022-77, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not to exceed $1,825,000 of notes in anticipation of the issuance of bonds to provide funds to pay costs of acquiring real estate for city purposes.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Mr. President,
Councilman,
I am in possession of the fiscal officer's certificate.
thank you.
Ordinance 2022-78, an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of not to exceed $2,180,000 economic development revenue notes of the city under Section 13, Article 8 of the Ohio Constitution and Chapter 165 of the Ohio Revised Code to pay costs of a, quote, project, unquote, as defined in Section 165.01 of the Ohio Revised Code for the purpose of creating and preserving jobs and employment opportunities and improving economic welfare of the city and its residents and the state of Ohio, providing for the pledge that the purpose of certain non-tax revenues, establishing certain funds of the city and approving related documents.
Good job.
Take a vote.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Mr. President,
Councilman,
I am in possession of the fiscal officer's certificate.
thank you.
Ordinance 2022-79, an ordinance amending Section 941.01 entitled, quote, classifications established, end quote, of Chapter 941 of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code entitled, quote, refuse collection, end parens.
Mr. President, on behalf of myself and Councilwoman Heeman, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-80, a resolution authorizing the Director of Law on behalf of the City of North Olmsted to enter into an agreement with the law firm of Squire, Patton and Boggs to provide professional legal services for community and economic development and for the creation and modification of tax increment financing, quote, TIF, end quote, incentive districts, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Resolution 2022-81, a resolution authorizing the Director of Law on behalf of the City of North Olmsted to enter into an agreement with Attorney Michael P. Maloney to serve as special counsel in matters related to a law enforcement use of deadly force investigation and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Thank you. As a reminder for all, the public hearing on ordinance 2022-71 is scheduled for next Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 at 7 o'clock p.m. And so therefore, we will begin scheduling the committee meetings on September 13th at 7:05 p.m. That said, Councilman Lippert, would you like to schedule BZD?
I would. I'd like to schedule a building zoning development meeting on the 13th of September at 7:05 p.m. to discuss 2022-68, 2022-71, 2022-72, and 2022-73. Would ask that the Economic Development Director and then the mayor and/or her designee be present, and that meeting is expected to go till 7:30.
Thank you. Councilman Scarl, would you like to schedule environmental control meeting?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to schedule environmental control committee meeting at 7:30 to like 7:40, and ask the mayor designee to be present for
Thank you.
ordinance 2022-79.
Thank you. And finally, Councilman Glassmer, would you like to schedule a finance meeting?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to schedule a Finance Committee meeting beginning at 7:40 for consideration of 2022-80 and 81. For those pieces of legislation, would request, if the departments deem appropriate, a representative from Law and Economic Development. I'm sorry, Economic Development regarding 80, and if the mayor has a further designee regarding 81. And then I will yield to Vice Chair Limpert.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We'll close that meeting, and I will head the second session of finance related to ordinance 2022-77 and 2022-78 related to school bonds, and ask that the finance director and any other designees from the mayor be present for that. And that will pick up immediately after the previous meeting.
Thank you. And lastly, I'll be scheduling a special council meeting for next week, September 13th at 8:00 p.m. to consider time-sensitive legislation that will be on second and third reading. Is there a motion on the floor to excuse the absence of Councilwoman Williamson?
So moved.
Second.
Who had the second? Okay, thank you. Motion to excuse Councilwoman Williamson made by Councilman Kelly, seconded by Councilwoman Heeman. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassberg?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Councilwoman Williamson is excused by a vote of 6-0. With the agenda being completed and there being no further business to come before council, this meeting of September 6, 2022 is adjourned at 8:54 p.m.